Hi, this is David Young with DY Wood Carving, and today we're talking about how to carve a turkey. So of course, to carve a turkey, you're going to want to start by getting your carving knife nice and sharp. Just kidding. That's not the type of turkey we're carving today. Although if you came for that type of turkey, I hope you stick around, because this is going to be fun. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be carving a cute little turkey out of a block of basswood. Okay. We're going to be carving that today out of a 1.5 by 1.5, so 1.5 inch square by 2.25 inch tall piece of basswood. And just a quick note on that, the first ones that I carved I carved this one last year, 1 by 1 by 1.5. I like carving them little like this. It's a little bit harder to see in the camera when I'm doing that, and I know it's a little bit harder on some people's hands to hold a little tiny carving like that. So today I'm going to do 1.5 by 1.5 by 2.25. That's what we're doing today. But you could scale it down to 1 by 1 by 1.5. You could scale it up. If you had 1.25 inch square stock, it would be 1 7/8 tall. You could even try 2 by 2 by 3 if you wanted to. Okay. So a quick note on that. I'm going to be carving this entire piece today, this version of this turkey, from a complete block with only a knife. We're going to be taking a lot of wood off. That might be a little bit challenging. You can simplify this process by carving instead just on the half. Okay, so a lot of times carvers will take their block of wood, split it down the middle, you get just the corner. If you follow just the front part of this pattern, it's a great option to simplify this project. It'll give you a flat back. You can use that as a magnet, but it can also still be freestanding. And that's an option to simplify this if you have the ability to split the wood, and it just makes it a little bit simpler. Okay. You could also split just part of the back. That's how I did this one. And so on this one I had my 1.5 by 1.5 by 2.25 block, and I used the top of my bandsaw to split the back side off and just leave enough to leave the back of the tail feathers there, but I didn't carve as much detail on it. So I never want to assume that people have a bandsaw and can do that. So we're going to do our project today from the solid piece, but that is an option if it's something that you can do, and it'll just make the project go a little bit quicker for you. Make that just on the corner if you want to. All right, so I've already kind of started marking off my block of wood to get us started here, but I'm going to show you again how I would do that. What I would do is I'm going to start by putting a vertical center line on each face of my block. I'm just using my knuckle to measure that, but if I were to measure that, I want it at 3/4 inches, okay? Because that's 1.5 inch wide in each face, okay? And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into thirds. And so on this block, that means that each one of those is going to be 3/4 inches tall. And I'm just like breaking that into thirds. So if you're using one of the other sizes, you can just do the center line, break it into thirds. This will work just fine. Okay. So I'm going to glove up here. The knife that I'm going to use today for this is the Pinewood Forge Harley knife. I love this knife. There's a couple reasons why I'm using it here. One is that I want a big, long knife that's pretty rough. Not rough, but strong. I want a strong, long knife. So a roughing knife that will just kind of be able to make big cuts for me, because I'm going to be making some long, big cuts here. The other is that, of course, the Pinewood Forge knife, Harley knife, kind of associated with flat plane, and this turkey's kind of a flat plane kind of style, I think you could say. So anyway, all right, so if I've got my wood marked like this, the first thing I'm going to do is on the back, I'm going to take this back corner off all the way down to those lines. And so it might be helpful to connect across the top, that line there. You can do it on the bottom too if you want to. I'm going to connect between those, and I am taking this entire corner off. okay, all the way down to that line. And this is where, if you wanted to save some time, use that split option. If you have a bandsaw, you could take the corner off. Now, I can do this pretty quickly. It might take you a little bit longer, and that's fine. If you've got to take a few more cuts, don't worry about it. Okay, I'm just going to kind of quickly flatten that whole corner down until it's completely flat between those two lines. Of course, if you've watched any of my other tutorial videos, you've seen me do this a lot. It's a great way to kind of widen out my block through the corners. It gives me a piece that ends up looking a lot wider, bigger than what maybe it actually appears like to begin with. So I like doing that. That's going to be my first step here. Okay. So I'm going to leave that like that for now, and I'm going to come back to my front. Now, I'm going to draw pattern lines on as I go on the front here, but I'll show you where we're headed with this. There's a lot of lines. There's a lot of lines to make this. And this is definitely a beginner-friendly video, but I will say there's a little bit more involvement here than some of my other really simple videos, and it's a little more challenging to make clean cuts. So if you want to get a view of what the full pattern looks like on the front of those, you can see that. Okay, I'm going to be drawing it on just one step at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do on the front is I'm going to come back and I'm going to just eyeball it, but I'm going to split vertically this front corner in half. Okay, and I can just eyeball that. It's going to be good enough, I think. You could measure it out if you wanted to. Okay. And then I am going to, let's see, this is going to be my bottom. So I'm going to extend out these horizontal lines that I already had there in both directions like this. I'm going to do the same thing up here. You could get your ruler out and do this if you wanted to, but it's going to be close enough. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get right in the middle, center of that corner, right here. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. That'll be good enough. And I'm going to split that corner here in half horizontally. And what that's going to do is I need to start by making sure that the beak sticks out. So the beak is going to end up being this little area right here. Okay, and we are going to remove, first of all, a smaller corner above and below the beak, right there. So that's going to be my first step. So I'm going to use stop cuts on the bottom of where the beak is going to be, push up to them, and just keep repeating that until I get that corner flat down to that vertical line on both sides that I just drew. And that's defining where the bottom of the beak will be. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the top. Put in a stop cut and just work my way up to it. Actually, all the way up to here. Sorry, that's going to be the top of my beak. So before I flatten all the way down too much of the corner, I gotta make sure I've got this part for the beak to stick out. Okay. Now, of course, you could turn your block around, carve upwards if you want, that sort of thing. If your block starts kind of tearing instead of cutting smoothly, you might want to do that. I'm having a lot of good luck carving this way, so I'm not going to do that a whole lot, but there we go. So that's what we've got now, right where the beak is going to be sticking out. Okay. All right. So next, I am going to start lowering down to where the top of the head will be. So I'm going to redraw that line, And I'm going to remove next this whole part here, just on the top, to get rid of where the top of the head is going to be, or to define what it is. And on this one, what I like to do is start on a corner, take that off, work my way down, start on the other corner that I have here, because it's just a little bit easier to carve into a corner than it is a completely flat surface. And then if I keep doing that, working my way down, and I'm working down to, this vertical pattern line that I've drawn in there, then what I'll end up with as I get closer there is I'll end up with a ridge down the middle. You can see that here. And then I can put my stop cut in there, and it's a little bit easier to carve into there. So I'm just working from the outsides and then across the inside. But again, what I'm trying to do is get flat all the way down to there. I work the sides so that I have one side flat down to that line. Work the other side until I have it flat down to that line. And I know I've got a ridge in the middle here. I can come back and start flattening that down. Now I can tell that's starting to tear a little bit, so I'm going to want to carve this way. So I'm going to turn around and do this. And this is where you got to take a little bit of care to make some clean cuts here. If I turn it around and carve the other way, it'll smooth out. If I make some really light cuts over that bottom part, it'll typically smooth out as well. Okay, so now I've gotten the top of the head kind of defined there, but I'm not quite done. So I've got the top of the head defined there, but now I need to get the sides of the head defined on the sides. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to draw, this bottom part is going to be the wing. I'm going to leave that there for now, and starting on the top 2/3, I'm going to draw another vertical pattern line, splitting that in half. Okay, do the same thing on the other side, draw another vertical pattern line, and I'm just doing that by eye. You can measure it out if you want. I'm going to split that in half. And now what I'm going to remove is I'm going to have to remove this side, this part, everything up here, everything on this side, and everything in this side. And that will make my head stand out from the feathers, right? So let's start by doing everything above the head. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the top of this line and the top of this line back here. I'm going to connect those down like this so that I know how far I'm going to get that flat. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the previous step. I'm going to put a stop cut in on the first corner. I'm going to work that down until I get about down to that vertical line on the left there that I want to get to. I'm going to do the same thing on the right until I get the sides down. And then I've got a bit of a ridge across the middle. That's going to make it easier for me to do there. So I'm just repeating that stop cut on what's going to be the top of the turkey head. I'm going to come down. Now I can feel that my wood's tearing a little bit, carving in this direction. I'm taking big chunks off, and I'm not worried about it yet because it's not tearing below where I need it to be. Like, it's not tearing below that line. But as I get closer to that line, I'm going to take care to kind of turn around and kind of smooth it off towards the top. Now I know I make this look kind of easy. I can do it fairly quickly, but I remember watching YouTube videos in the past. I remember watching a Doug Linker video when I was just getting started carving. I think it was his original bear video. And he was cutting across the top of the head, and I thought, man, this is taking me forever. So that's okay. A lot of it is hand strength and practice and experience. And so you got to remember, whittling's about taking your time and having fun. If it's taking a little bit longer, that's okay. Just enjoy the experience, enjoy that nice feeling of the knife cutting through wood. take the steps that you need to. So I've kind of turned around, carving towards the top in order to get down to that line. That's going to help me visualize that when I turn it back around. And it's helping me get some nice, smoother cuts because I really want all of my surfaces to be as smooth and flat at the end of this project if I can. And what I'm doing is defining the start of the feathers. So you can see there's still a ridge there. So I'm just going to come back now the other way and work my way down. And this one is, it's splitting a little bit as I get towards there. It's going to be difficult to know which way your wood's going to want to be carved. And so that's a good thing for you to see here. So I'm starting to go really careful with my shavings here because I don't want it to split and I want it to be as flat as possible. So you see I'm just really gliding my knife straight across the surface, trying to get that as flat as I can, for sure. Okay. And I'm not going to worry too much about this surface here because I can flatten that out and we'll round it out a little bit later in one of the later steps on finishing the head. So I'm pretty close here. I've got that pretty flat. That's good. So that's the top of the head and starting to separate the flat part of the feathers there. So next I'm going to need to remove this part on the sides of the head on each side. And that's going to be this rectangle here and this rectangle here. And that's going to be a little bit trickier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this whole little triangle section out here. And to do that, let's see, I'll do this side first. I'm going to put a stop cut right along that line, right along the side of the head. I'm going vertically into the wood, not at an angle into the side of the head, but if I'm holding this like it's going straight into the side of the turkey, that's what I'm doing, okay? Straight along the side of the head, and I'm going to put another stop cut at the corner there. And then very carefully, I don't want my knife going into the side of the turkey's head, it won't appreciate that. I'm just going to start carving off a line like that. See that? So I'm trying to be careful that the tip of my knife is not going into the side of the head. I'm just cutting along that. And if I've made my deep stop cut along the side of the head, and I made that stop cut at the bottom, that piece should fall out. I'm making really small cuts to begin with here to show you what I'm doing. I'm going to start doing some little bit bigger ones here. And this might take a little bit of practice. Again, the main thing you're watching out for here is trying to keep track of where is the tip of my knife and is it going into the side of the head. And it's not a huge deal if it does a little bit. But I'll show you here in a minute what will happen if you do too much of that. So I'm going to keep doing this and I'm going to repeat the cuts until they come out. Never trying to pry, always waiting to get it out, okay? If my knife goes too far in here when I'm doing these cuts, you can see these little lines. And I've got a few, and that's okay. But I'll get these lines on the side, it won't be as clean. So I'm really paying attention to where's the tip of my knife when I'm making that cut. Now the nice thing when I'm done with that is now I can come back and kind of go in the other direction here. You can see I had kind of a horizontal knife mark along here. Now I can start to flatten that out a little bit better. Okay, and I can actually use that. At this point, I don't care if my knife goes underneath where the head is. Now that I've got it flat, I can kind of use that to help me get in there a little bit further and get a better angle on flattening the top part out here too. Okay, great. So that's what that looks like. I can also take my knife and I can clean up the side here just by running along the edge of it carefully, and I can start to just shave off. If I do have some little lines there, and you can see I do, that's okay. I can clean that up a little bit. So let's do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to do a straight stop cut along the side of the head. I'm going to cut into the bottom of that there. And the difference is, for me anyway, as a righty, I am going to be doing more of a paring cut down towards myself for this. on this side, but it's the same idea. Repeat that stop cut in along the side of the head and the bottom of the head area or the top of the wing area here until I get it all the way down flat. Oops. And I'm getting close here. Okay, so it's a little bit of an awkward kind of cut, a little bit different than I've had in some of my other projects. But what we're going to get is a really nice, I'm almost there. All right, what we're going to get is a really nice flat surface. So now I'm just going to work my way up and smooth that area out. Connect it up to the upper part of the feathers there, and I'm going to get a really nice flat surface for the feathers that's sitting significantly further back than the top of the head. Okay, so repeat those cuts to kind of clean that out, and I think I'm going to call that good enough for now. You can spend a lot of time working this back and forth and getting this as flat as you want, but that's going to be good enough for the purposes of the video today. All right, so we've got a great block in for the head on the front. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this around and work on the back. So if you decided that you wanted to do the corner carving, you don't have to do this next step, but I'm going to do it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a similar thing to define the tail feathers on the back. I am going to first of all extend the horizontal line on the top there. That's going to line with the top of my tail feathers. And then I am going to add that vertical pattern line on both sides above the wings going up to the top, because I'm going to flatten down there in order to get that flat area centered along the widest part of my block to be my feathers. So I'm going to have to remove all of this, all of this, all of this, this section, and this section in order to leave what I need for my tail feathers. This is going to be exactly like I just did, so I'm sorry you've got to suffer through it again. But I have a question for you while I do it. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing we did on the front side. Okay, stop cuts on the sides, side corners like this, working those down until I've flattened all the way across the top ridge of where those tail feathers are going to be. The question I have for you is this: why do turkeys make good bandmates? They bring their own drumsticks. Ba-dum-bum-ch. Of course, a drum-based joke deserves a rim shot, right? So yeah, I'm working the sides of this down to those vertical lines, and I'm working this one in. Anyway, there's a lot of kind of repeated sections on the back here, so I'll be stuffing this video full of turkey jokes. Try to keep these repeat sections from getting too boring. On the positive side, it gives you additional conversational pieces for your family or friend gatherings on Thanksgiving. Everybody appreciates a good eye roller, especially on Thanksgiving, right? Except for the cranberries. Do you know why the cranberries blushed? They saw the turkey dressing. All right. So you can see here why I like having that long blade here. I've got my 2-inch Harley blade because I can get it across that whole flat area. You could do this with a shorter blade connecting across the middle. It would just take a little bit longer, and this works really well. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. defining the top of, oh boy, I dropped my turkey. Defining the top of where my tail feathers are. So that's this little ledge here, right? And now I've got to take the sides off just like I did the sides of the head. And I'm just, I'm going to be a little bit quicker, a little bit less attention to detail as I work through the back. You can take as much time on this as you want. But what did the turkey say to the hunter? Quack, quack. Hope that worked out for him. The turkey, not the hunter. Actually, I don't know. I don't know who I'm rooting for in that scenario if it's Thanksgiving week. But if a turkey's clever enough to say quack, I feel like they should be off the hook, right? All right, so there's one side of the tail feathers. Same thing over here. Cutting along the side, across the bottom of that section, working my way in. And do you know what's blue and covered in feathers? Turkey holding its breath. Okay, so you can see my block there, or my chip there, having a little bit of trouble coming out. I'm not prying it, I'm just being patient. I'm going back to my cuts. I know where I'm making them. I'm making them over and over again. I'm not going to pry them out with my knife. That's the temptation. If you're trying to rush, or if you're a beginner, why isn't it coming it out? Just take your time, make those cuts, be patient with the process. There we go. Okay. Great. So now I've left a nice platform, not that guy, this guy, I've left a nice platform where my tail feathers are going to be. Good. All right, so let's get back to the front where the action's happening. Next thing I'm going to do is I am going to draw some pattern lines across the sides to kind of start shaping the outside shape of my feathers. So I'm going to actually extend this half vertical line all the way to the bottom there, and I'm going to draw some angles across the side of the turkey. At the top, I'm going to split this entire third from this corner up to this corner, and I'm going to be removing this triangle. Okay. On these bottom sections, I'm going to mark the middle of this section and the middle of this section. And on these two, I'm going to be carving a notch in and down like that. So this is going to be kind of the top of the wing, the bottom of the feathers that I'm splitting out there. And then I'm going to carve a notch in the bottom here, which is going to be the bottom of the wing. Okay. So this is halfway up that third section, halfway up that middle third. Draw those angles across. Those shaded parts are what I'm going to remove. So let's do the same thing across the back. If you are doing the back, we're going to take the corresponding spots out of the back here. I should go ahead and extend that down. Make sure I'm getting it all the way back. Okay, so I know what I'm taking off on that side. It might be helpful to connect these across the bottom. So I'll go ahead and do that. I don't always draw all these lines, but certainly helpful if it's the first time that you're doing it. Now let's do the same thing to the other side. Splitting that one in half. This is the part that's coming off. Marking the midway point in each of those thirds. Making a notch here. Separate the top of the wing from the bottom of the feathers. I'm going to extend that line down so I know where it is. Make a similar notch here at the bottom of the feathers. Okay. Do the same thing on the back. And kind of use my front as a visual reference. And you can see I'm just kind of eyeballing that. It's going to be close enough, I think, but you can get out your ruler, you can measure that out. Just draw those straight lines if you need to. And again, it's all relative to the shape. So if you're doing this on a different size, you can easily figure that out. Okay. So let's start on the right side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these shaded sections out. Right on the right side, I'm going to do that. I like to start in the middle here. I'm making a big V cut to remove that. I put my knife straight in to make a stop cut to keep that centered right on the line where I want it. Carve up to it both ways to remove those. Okay, so that's good. I'll just slide up to the top here and take a couple cuts to flatten that out. You take as many cuts as you need to there. I've removed that, and then flip it over to get the bottom and do that. Okay, so there's my shaping on the right side of the turkey. My right, his left. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And do you know why turkeys gobble? It's because they've never learned their table manners. It's good. All right, so there we go. We got those shapes on both sides. So we've really roughed in, at this point, kind of the general shape of the turkey. And what we're going to start to do is kind of work from the bottom to the top, further shaping and adding detail, but we're going to kind of skip over the beak area because I want to do the beak at the end. You've got that nice pointy beak, and if you carve it first, you're going to be bumping into it with your hands and potentially kind of messing it up. So bottom to top, we're going to start adding some more detail. All right, so let's do that. First thing I want to do is I'm going to just kind of draw this reference line straight across the side, middle of the side of the wing there. I'm going to draw an angle up and an angle down. Okay. Let's do that on the other side too. So I'm going to draw that straight across there, horizontally separating that wing, and I'm going to draw an angle up towards the top of the head and an angle down towards the bottom of the head. That's just going to give me some reference lines to help keep track of how I'm going to taper the top and bottom area of the wing area. So let's focus on the bottom area first. I'm going to also add a center line on the side of the wing there, and then kind of a line across the bottom connecting from that up to there. And what I'm going to remove is this whole kind of part here. Okay. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. I'm just going to run across the corner. Now this isn't going to be perfect. It's not a perfectly flat area, but it gives me those lines, give me a good reference point, and I can do that and I can kind of smooth out that area between there. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll draw the reference line there for you so you can see it. And again, I'm taking this corner off on the bottom of the wing like this. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of envision where that line is over here, and I'm going to kind of draw that across. I wouldn't normally draw it, but that way you can kind of see it below the beak. And I'm going to take that, and from that point I'm just going to taper down, just push it back a little bit with a push cut towards the bottom, so that the side of the, or the front of the bottom of the neck is kind of getting tucked in down towards the bottom of the body, right? And then I'm just going to work my way to the side. I'm going to take this side off here, kind of moving over to that first cut I made on the side of the wing. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So nothing super complicated here. Essentially all I'm doing is I'm taking the entire bottom half of the, or bottom third of the wing area, and, well, half to third, and flattening it out so it's going back towards the bottom. Okay. So that's good. All right, I can see this one's not quite as far up as it is on the other side, so I'm going to fix that for symmetry. I'm always checking those things as I go along, trying to keep it nice and symmetric. Okay, good. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of shape the top half of the wing, but to do that, what I really want to do is I'm going to pinch in the bottom of the feathers towards the top of the wing. So I'm going to draw a similar line here, like I did on the top of the wing, and I'm going to pinch in this area here. If you want to, you can also add that. And when I do this, I'm going to start with the feather actually, because I want the feather to go further back. So I'm going to put in a stop cut right on the corner. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to taper this whole area in down towards the bottom of the head and neck area. So I'm going to taper that in here like that. Okay, good. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this bottom section. Like that. Now I'm going to need to be very careful the tip of my knife is not going into the side of my turkey head. He will not appreciate that, and neither will you when you're done. So just kind of up to there. And then I want the wing, like it is here, to be kind of sticking in front of where the feather is. I want the feathers to be kind of tucked a little bit further back than the wing area is here. And that's what I have. Okay. So let's do the same thing on the other side. Again, it might be helpful to draw a little horizontal line extending here, and that one extending there, so I can kind of see that area that I'm going to pinch in, compare it to the other side. I add a stop cut right on the corner, pinch the feathers in. It's a little bit easier for me as a right-hander to get my knife. See, the tip is going right into the corner. Don't want my knife way out here cutting off the side of the head, just right into the corner there. I can take that off. Then I'm going to have to do a little bit more of an awkward paring cut here to take that top part of the wing by. I'm almost kind of rolling it a little bit, trying to flatten out that area as much as I can. But again, I want my feathers to go behind, or further back, I should say, than the top of the wing. So I'm going to repeat that cut. Starting to get a little messy in that corner. I'm going to work that out. Good. Okay. So we've got that roughly there how I want it. Okay. So now I would like to add my cuts, kind of defining the sides of the head and the neck and separating from the wings. This cut here and this cut here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a diagonal line across here, coming from that corner, the base of the head and the wing, right across that flat surfaces that's left to the point where I started tapering down. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to cut a V cut right in there. So I'm going to start by putting a stop cut here. Again, watching that my knife is going up to that corner, but not too far. Put a V cut right, or a stop cut right along there, and then I'm going to carve a V cut, which means I'm carving in from both sides to that, from down and up. And I'm going to start small and make it a little bit deeper. I'm paying attention that the bottom, not bottom, but the edge of my knife here at the bottom of the cut is not going any further back. It'd be easy to cut this all the way across the bottom. So I'm trying to keep my knife there, paying attention to the length up to there, and I'm really just using that right length of my knife to make that right length of cut, making it a little bit deeper as I go. So there's that. Same thing on this side. Put that stop cut in, cut it from either side like that. Okay, similar kind of thing. Good. All right. A few different things that I'm going to do now here. I am going to take care of this area and this area where I've still got these lines in the flatness. And really, there's nothing fancy here. I'm just tapering the bottom half of the wings down and the top half of the wings up. So I'm just going to come over here, and I'm not going to try to carve deep. I'm just going to kind of shave that in towards the top, kind of taper it very slightly. Then I'm going to really lightly just kind of run over that hard edge that I made in my previous step, that cut. there, and maybe here on the side of the head too. And then I'm going to kind of just really lightly carve over that hard edge I made there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just kind of taper the top towards the top. I've got to use the edge. And really all I'm trying to do is shave off my pencil marks there. I'm okay with that being a little bit flat there. Excuse me. And then any place where I've had really hard cuts, I'm just slightly softening them. So along the edges of any of those cuts. Not a lot, because I want those hard, flat planes, but just softening those cuts a little bit. Okay. Felt like the other side was coming in a little further, so I extended that down, always looking for symmetry. Good. So I'm not going to do a lot of head shaping, but I'm going to do a little bit of head shaping now as I work my way up. So the first thing I want to do on the sides is I want these feathers to really be tucked into the corner here so that the head and the feathers kind of stick out a little bit more. So right in this corner, and this is going to help if I've had some messy cuts here, I'm going to stick the tip of my knife in from this side along the top of the wing, and then from this side along the side of the neck, and then I'm going to cut a little triangle chip out of that corner. And that's just going to create, a little bit of a shadow, kind of separate the feather from the wings, from the neck right there. Okay. Same thing on the other side. That just creates a little bit of extra depth, a little bit of extra separation, helps define that. Okay. Then I'm going to work that way across a little bit. Right now I've got a really hard line between the top of the feathers and the bottom of the neck, and I'm just going to come right above that. I'm going to pinch that in a little bit towards the feathers, a little bit towards the top of the wings. Pinch that in a little bit towards the top of the wing. Okay, and I know we haven't done the back yet. We'll get there in a minute. But I'm just going to show you the front for now. So pinch that a little bit in the bottom of the feathers towards the top of the wing, so that the feathers are coming in further back and the wing is sticking out a little bit further. Okay, and after I've done that, I might want to kind of just take the tip of my knife and smooth out the top of the wing there slightly. Okay, I'll do the same thing over here, just kind of smooth out the top of that wing slightly. Okay. Now I'm going to start shaping the head a little bit here as I'm working from bottom to top. I don't want to do a whole lot of shaping around the beak because I'm going to do that last. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a 45-degree angle cutting off the outside corner of the turkey's head there. So essentially from this flat corner here down to where the top of the beak is. Same thing on the other side, and these triangles above it are what I'm going to cut off in order to round the top of the turkey's head here and here. Okay. Now this is another one that's going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to be cutting straight into across the grain to take this corner off. I'm going to cut this corner straight off. To do that, I'm going to start by undercutting. So I'm going to slide the blade of my knife behind that area between the head and the top of the feathers, or the front of the feathers, and then I'm going to really carefully, see I'm going really slowly because when I get to the bottom I want that chip to just fall out, and I don't want to add a new cut across the sides of the wings, and this is where it can get easy to really mess up the front of your feathers if you're not careful. So let me show you that again. Undercut the corner, then I'm going to carve straight across the grain. This is a hard cut, have a firm grip, a lot of counter pressure, go slowly so that when you hit the bottom, hopefully that just rolls right off and you're not left with a lot of extra cut from the front and back of your blade. I'm going to repeat that until I get all the way down to the side of my head. Now, no matter how careful you are going to get some blade marks crossing across here, up there, this corner that you got rid of. So then you can come back after you're done and you can kind of run the edge of your knife straight over. At this point, it doesn't matter if the tip kind of goes under the back of the head, that's fine. And you can flatten that out a little bit. So then what you're doing is just kind of working to remove any of those cut marks that you left there. Okay, So there's that on the side of the right side of the turkey's head, or my right, his left. All right, same thing on the other side. I'm going to undercut the back corner there, take it off. I'm going to do this a little bit more quickly because I can, and you have the idea, but you're going to want to really take your time on this step because this is where you're going to end up with messy cut marks that you don't want. And you can see I've got some things coming up here. That's fine. I can come down now and just flatten that out one direction or the other and keep that flat, smooth surface for the top of, or for the front of my feathers. Okay. Good. So next I want to do a similar thing, but I just want to take off these hard corners that I left on the top, further round the top of the turkey head. So I might add a little bit of a stop cut there, but then I'm just kind of going straight across that hard corner all the way back. Very similar kind of thing, just to further round the top of the head. And really after that point, I think it's round enough for you. Okay. Then I'm going to run up the sides and just get rid of these hard corners, sides of the heads, here and here, and then maybe push over the top, just so I don't have those sharp, hard corners. But I'm not going down too far because I want to have kind of a flatter area in order to paint my eyes on. So I'm really just rounding over the top slightly. Okay. And actually I'm going to stop there for now on the head. That's going to be it for the head for the time being. We'll finish the rest of the head last when we carve the beak in a few minutes here. All right, so working our way from bottom to the top, we've got our wings kind of laid out. We've got the bottom of the feathers. We've got the head generally shaped. Now we're going to shape the top of the feathers. So what I'm going to do is I've already got this horizontal line here. I'm going to draw a line across the front of the feathers that's essentially running parallel to this cut that you already made here. Okay, and then I can draw a center line across the side, and I can kind of connect the top of those two there, because what I'm going to remove is this corner here. Okay, and this should come off pretty flat. So you're kind of taking that parallel across the front of the feathers, parallel to the outside cut we already made, cutting it back to a center line on the side there, and I'm going to take that entire shaded area off until it's nice and flat. Okay, let's do the same thing on the other side. So draw that across. Again, I think freehand is probably okay here, but you can get your ruler out and draw it if you want to. That'll give you a sense of what you need there. Be a little careful that I'm not going to clip the side of his head while I'm doing this, so just pay attention to where your knife is. I can get that across there, like that. Good. Now, I am going to need to do that on the back, so unless you split your wood completely in half, let's go ahead and do that. Same thing on the back side, so that I'm getting that shape of the feathers tapering towards the top. And again, you might take several more cuts to do this than I do, and that's okay. Okay, good. Now then the last thing I want to do is I'm going to come about halfway up this side, and I'm going to draw a line straight up to that corner that I cut to. I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'm going to connect that over the top. And I'm going to take that whole corner off too. So again, I'm going to go about halfway up this side that I just cut, mark where that is, draw a line up to the end of that cut from the previous step, do that on the back as well, connect it over the top, and then I'm going to take this whole corner off the top. So what I'm essentially doing is just further rounding the outside of the feathers so the top doesn't look too flat. The first couple that I did here, I ended up with really flat tops. These are a little bit more rounded. So I'm going to do that on the other side too. That helps me with that. Okay. Good. Now, that top is still pretty flat and, you know, still really flat on the top. So I'm going to keep tapering the top of these feathers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw myself a line separating that top in half. I'm going to taper up to it, and I'll draw it for you, but I'm going to say about a third of the way down that front face. I'm going to taper up to it from about here. So I'm going to be pushing back from that line up to the center of the feathers, just rounding that back. And so you can see what I start to get is I got these nice angled faces on the outside of the feathers. That's going to give me that for the top of the feathers too. And we keep doing that. I don't have to get all the way back to that top line, but I need to get close to it. So that's doing pretty good there. Okay. I can do a similar thing across the back. I'll show you a secret. If you've got a really sharp knife with a long blade, you can just do this straight across. Now you gotta have a really sharp knife. You gotta have good hand strength to be able to do that. It's probably easier for most people to just carve up, like this, but that's the way I do that usually, just to be quick. So now I'm just going to do a few things to further round this. I've got this kind of hard corner there. I'm going to run over that with my knife. Same thing here. I'm going to run over that. I'm going to take that hard corner I see there, run over that. I'm going to repeat that on the back, getting rid of any hard corners that I have, just kind of taking them off. Not completely rounded. I mean, you can round it as much as you want, but just kind of flattening that a little bit. So I've got checking for symmetry, keeping nice flat planes, but no, the original hard corners are kind of just slightly knocked off the hard edges. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take these hard corners on the side and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to gently take the edge of that hard corner off. I'm going to do that all the way around. I'm going to do it up the side here. The way that I carve that, it's not really necessary down here. And on the top it's flat, but I want to get rid of those pencil marks, and I can carefully just carve straight across the top to kind of finish that off like that. Okay, do the same thing on the other side here. Flatten that out across here. Yeah, now I can see I've still got a few pencil marks. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shave off any areas that I see pencil marks. You can use an eraser, but I figure why use an eraser when you have a knife? There we go. Okay, so that's going to be pretty good, and I've got the basic outline of the feathers there. All right. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and do everything that we just did on the back. I'm going to do it fairly quickly. But the first thing I'm going to do is shape the tail feathers, because if you're going to do that, now's the time to do it before you start cutting into the sides of the wings. So I'm going to do that first. So I'm just kind of splitting that top into thirds, and then I'm cutting off the top at a 45-degree angle, and I'm just eyeballing that. You could measure that out, but we're going to get rid of this triangle here, and then on the bottom I want to do a similar thing coming across here. Okay, but I don't want to go as far in. I'm only going to come out maybe a quarter of the way across that rectangle, and I'm going to come down to that there. Okay, so I'm just tracing out the shape of what those tail feathers might be. Okay, so this is going to be exactly like rounding the top of the head. I'm going to undercut. I'm going to take those sides off. I'm going to just do it as quickly as I can here. You get the idea. Okay, of course when I do it quickly it gets a little messy. I can come back and I can flatten these areas out as I need to. But you don't need to watch a lot of time of me flattening things out. You already done that. So anyway, what did the turkey have for Thanksgiving dinner? Nothing, it was stuffed. I really like how a lot of these jokes revolve around stuffing, because stuffing is my favorite part of Thanksgiving dinner. No offense to present company. Okay, on these corners here, I'm going to do a similar kind of thing, but You can see I'm putting in a stop cut where the tail feather meets the top of what's really the back of the body at this point. And I'm cutting out this triangle section. I've got to undercut the bottom right along the side there. I've got to put a stop cut along that ridge there, and I've got to put another one along here until I get those out. And again, I'm going to be patient, and I'm not going to pry them out. I'm going to keep making those cuts until I have them. Although I'm going to be honest and say, I feel like I should be there now. And that's okay. Sometimes you might take you a few cuts to get. There we go. That was the one that was waiting for it. Okay, so I got that triangle cut out there. I'll show you again what I'm doing there. I'm putting a stop cut right along the bottom of that triangle there. Doing another one along the side here. It's going to be easiest if I kind of start with a smaller triangle chip in that corner. That's what I did on the other side. And bring that down. But then eventually I'm trying to get this entire corner out. This is a little bit awkward. Probably fairly easy to see what the section of wood that you're trying to get out is, but a little bit harder to do in practice. I'm just going to keep following those cuts, and then I'm making this undercut tip of my blade back here. Again, that's why it's important that you've got a nice firm knife, thin at the tip, so you can get it in there. Great. All right, let's do this. I'm going to do the shaping the bottom of the wings like I did before. I'm not going to take the time to draw the lines, but I'm making these same tapers towards the bottom that I did on the front. I'm going to cut off corners on each side here and taper that bottom down like that. Okay. On the top, I've got to taper in the sides of the wings, or the feathers. Again, on the back, I'm going to do that first here. Then I'm going to do it on the bottom. Okay. Let's go over to the other side, do the same thing. And taper the feathers back towards the top of the wing, exactly like we did on the front side. And I'm going to taper that wing up towards this way. And let's do all those other things we did on the front. Just kind of smooth out any hard corners. Flatten out any of these areas that I haven't carved yet that have pencil marks or things like that. I'm not as picky about what the back of my carvings look like usually, but anyway. All right. Now I'm going to extend these lines just at the same angle that they are, a little bit further in, and I'm going to make V-cuts to separate the bottom of the tail feathers. So stop cut along that line and then carve into it from both sides. To be fair, it's going to be easier to carve in it from the outside because you're carving right along that angle. But I'm going to separate those out. Okay. Same thing here, put that stop cut along the side of the bottom of the tail feathers, and we're going to do that. Okay. Now let's just round that off. We've got that hard corner there, so I'm going to use the tip, and I'm going to kind of roll into the bottom there, rounding off what the back of those tail feathers look like. Okay. I'm going to round the top of the tail feathers by just cutting those hard corners off, similar to what we did on the sides of the head, like that. Got that hard corner there I'm going to take off. The hard corner there I'm going to take off. These on the outside. Good. So I could spend a little bit of time cleaning that up. I do want to flatten, kind of round off the top of the wing area on the back, like we did on the front. And maybe round off some of the hard corners across the back of the feathers that I did on the front, like that. But I am going kind of quick on the back here because I'm aware that this video is getting long fast. Long for me anyway. All right, there we go. So, said we're going to do the beak last, so we're almost done, but we got to do the feathers next, and that's fun. So I'm going to draw on the lines where I'm going to make the separations for the feathers. So the first one I'm going to do straight up the center. So I'm looking to line up with the beak and go straight up the center of it, right across the middle like that. Okay. The next line I'm going to do is going to be straight horizontal, and it's going to be right in the middle of the angled side of the head. So I'm going to look at right where I cut that angle off of the head, start in the middle there, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line straight out towards the side like that. Then I want to make sure on the other side that I'm getting at the same spot. I'm going to draw a horizontal line straight out there. Okay. And then I'm going to make two more lines that are essentially just in the middle. So I'm looking for the midpoint along the head, right, so that I'm splitting these into equal sections. I'm going to eyeball that and draw that out right there. Okay, same thing on the other side. Good. So I've got one cut for the feathers up the middle and then one on each side. I'm going to extend those just across the top like that. So that I can see where those are going, at least all the way across to the top. Okay. All right, let's start with the middle one. And what I'm going to do is just make really big, deep V cuts to separate them. And I like that, you know, we get that really nice flat surface of the front of the feathers cut up by these nice clean V cuts to make that great shape of the feathers. So to get that, I want to start right on the angle here, that little bump. It's going to be easiest to get my knife in there and start. So I'm going to put a stop cut along that tip of my knife. I'm going to watch, make sure it doesn't go into the top of the head. It'll go right up too, but not quite there. And I can start small with just at that ridge, a V cut like that. I'm cutting from both sides, and I put that stop cut there to make sure that it stays centered in the same spot. So there's a baby V cut. But we got to help it grow up into a grown-up V-cut. So I'm going to keep making it deeper and bigger, help it grow, nurture it by shaving off the sides of it. Okay, pay attention to the tip of your knife so you're getting the edge of it right down to the top there, and then it's going right back here. Now when I get to the top, I'm going to have to extend that stop cut right across the top. And of course now we're going to make another V-cut across the top to break that up, but I'm going to be carving straight into the end grain, which is a little bit harder. Okay, so be firm, hold your knife well. It's going to be feeling like it's getting pulled into the wood. You want your knife to be nice and sharp for this. And then I get that separation. Now what I might do is kind of extend that here to connect those two cuts a little bit further like that. And you can watch it for symmetry. It looks to me like this one needs to come from a little bit further out to be symmetric. Double checking them. But the key to keeping it symmetric, the key to making it clean is really making those stop cuts straight down the middle. That'll keep your cuts centered. I'm going to do the same thing. Just rotate it here, do the next one over, starting on that upper ridge, extending it forward down to the top of the head, growing that V-cut gradually until I get it so it's coming together right at the top of the head. And then when I get back to the side, I'm going to do this. And again, this is going to be a little awkward cutting across or into the end grain. I'm going to do that. You can see that this one is kind of sticking up a lot, so I'm going to come down here and carve that more straight across in order to create that separation, right? So that's pretty good. Let's keep rotating. We'll go to the next one, this side horizontal one. Make the same V-cut here. Same process. Watching the tip of my knife as it gets towards the head, getting it that deep. And then notching it on the side will be a little bit easier here. This is kind of a more natural place to create those side notches. Okay, so there we go. Let's just clean that one up there a little bit if we can. Okay, same thing working down the other side. And put in my stop cut, make my V-cut across here. It's not coming out, so I'm just going to make a little stop cut at the top of the head there. Okay, extend that over the top. And we'll keep going that way. So what did the mother turkey say to her disobedient children? She said, "If your father could see you now, he'd be rolling over in his gravy." That one's a little bit dark, sorry. All right, there's that one. We'll do this one. Keeping on the theme of misbehaving turkeys. Why do turkeys always get in trouble at school? It's because they use foul language. That's a good one. Okay, so you can see that. All right, so watch these. Make them as symmetric as you can. Keep checking. You don't want to cut these in deep to really show that shape. And so the temptation would be to make really small cuts here, and that's fine. Start small, but then make them bigger as you go. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and finish off the beak in the front area here before we do the back. And then you can decide if you want to do the back or not. So to carve the beak, this is what I do. And this is exactly the same if you've watched my hatching chick videos as that. I'm going to mark the center of the beak right there. And I'm going to draw a line from that up towards the top of the beak like that. And down towards the bottom of the beak like this. Okay, and the first step is going to be to carve the top and the bottom triangles there off. So what I'm doing is I'm tapering the top of that beak right up towards the top of the rectangle, just taking that whole corner off. I got to be really careful when I'm pushing up that I'm not going too far. I could easily, cut further than I want to and create some problems for myself by just going too far across one way or the other. So you can see I'm making that cut. Do it on the bottom again, nice and slow, so that my knife doesn't like pop through and then just create a bad cut across my wood that I don't want to see there. But I'm just doing that. Okay. And then the next step is I'm going to add a center line down the top and bottom of the beak, and then along each side of the beak. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one corner off at a time. So let's start with this one. I'm going to shade in the top and the left side of that beak. And I'm going to basically flatten between those two lines, take that whole corner off. So to do that, I'm going to put in a back cut, undercut, across the back side of the wing. So again, I'm sliding my blade straight in between the front of the face and the side of the beak there to create kind of a stop cut as I'm undercutting. And then I'll just slide my knife out carefully. And then I'm going to push from the front here and take that corner off all the way down to there. You might want to take a couple cuts to do that. Go very slowly and carefully because again, you're going to be prone to making ugly cuts across the front of your face if you're not careful. I'm not going to shade the next one in, but I'm going to move over and do the next one. Undercut the corner, carve off, keeping the front part of my knife on the center line at the top, the back part of my knife on the center line on the side, and then it'll pop right out of there. Now I do have little lines here, that makes sense, where I had those stop cuts before, and what I can do now is just kind of really gently shave those off until I don't really see those anymore. Okay. Just kind of clean up my cuts like that. Okay. Good. Let's do the same thing on the bottom. Undercut the corner. Carve it off. Undercut the corner. Carve it off. Same thing here. Good. Now, I'm nearly done on the head here. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to finish smoothing and rounding things off. So I've got the side of the head here. I'm just going to take that harder corner off. Okay, I'm going to take this hard side off. This corner down in front of the, or below the beak, I should say. And take those off. Just slightly rounding what's left there. I didn't do that before because I really wanted to get the wing or get the beak in and then shape around it. If you start shaping first, you start to kind of mess up the shape where you want the beak to be, and I want that beak area to be nice and flat when I start. Okay, so you can keep cleaning that up as much as you want. Again, if you're getting unwanted cut marks, you can kind of shave them up. The other thing is that get it as good as you can. Your paint, your finish may help with that. Okay, great. So the front of my turkey's all done. If you're doing the front part, you're good. If you want to finish the tail feathers, I'm just going to show you real quick what I would do here. So first of all, I would extend the feathers down the back, the same stop cuts that I made. I would just extend right down the back. Okay, so I'm going to do that really quickly, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of time to check for symmetry and make those perfect, but I just want to show you what this will look like. Extending those down. Of course, you might want to draw them in with a pencil to make sure you've got them uniform. But basically, I'm going to follow the same pattern down towards the back. But the reason I want to show you this is because I'll use them as kind of reference points for texturing the back of the tail feathers. Okay. So that gives you an idea of what the back would look like. I'd probably want to come around and really make sure this is symmetric on every corner. Everything looks right here. Okay. All right, and then the last thing that I want to do then is I'm just going to add these little V-cuts for the tail feathers. And the way I did that is I kind of just am going in between, to alternate in between where those regular feathers are coming in. So I can kind of mark that a little bit, right? So I can kind of go between the two cuts where they're coming in at the top of the feathers. I'm going to make a V-cut in each one of those notches to kind of define, whoops, add a little bit of texture there. Okay, made that too hard. So if that starts to come out, this is what I would do. I've shown this in other videos, but I would add a piece of wood glue in there, hold it in, and I could keep carving. Okay, I'm just going to press it there for now and press on as we're almost to the end of the video there. But that happens sometimes. It's happening because I'm rushing. And that's okay. You can see it happens to all of us. Okay, if you want to add another one maybe on these side ones here, I'll do that down one more. That's really going to be tempting fate down here. Yeah, not a good idea for me right on that one. So we'll just leave that for now. But it gives you the idea. The other thing that I would do maybe is I could come in where these are here, and I could just kind of do a little triangle cut where these come together. And that's something that I would do to kind of separate those tail feathers a little bit further, like that, so that there's a little bit more of a shape to them. Okay, but yeah, and you can see I lost that side piece. But we're at the end of the video. I'm not gonna start over at this point. So I could glue that back on and keep carving there, but it gives you the idea. That's what your tail feathers look like. So I think that's it. That is a long project, at least as far as my videos go, but still doable in about an hour. And if you want to make it simpler, make the smaller version. If your hands are comfortable, it'll go a little bit quicker. It'll be a little bit easier to make some of those big cuts, a little bit harder to make the detailed ones. Or again, go ahead and do the one on the corner, and then you're only worried about the front. That's a little bit easier. But the end result, super cute. Tail feathers on the back look great. And yeah, I'll close out with this. What sound does a turkey's phone make? Wing, 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 wing. All right. Thanks for watching, and happy whittling.